Hello my people, Finderbub here. Thanks for checking out the video. Welcome to yet another episode of
I want to say mountains again! Mountains!
Finderbub. Today we're comparing Colorado's Maroon 4-pass loop to New Hampshire's Pemi Loop. Covering about 30 miles of trail each, both loops attract trail runners and backpackers alike. These people right here, they started at 6 a.m. and they're gonna finish before us today. They did the whole loop. So if you like running marathons or trail running, ultra things, good place for it. I've seen a lot of people doing it. In this video, we'll take a look at the important details of each hike, including differences in hiking terrain, flora and fauna, overall difficulty, in addition to things like frequency of water sources, campgrounds, epic views, etc. And I'll compare the experience of what it's like to spend time in New Hampshire's Pemigewasset Wilderness in White Mountain National Forest versus Colorado's Snowmass Wilderness in White River National Forest. But before we get into that, just a little tidbit for those of you who don't know. On this channel, I'm all about sharing my thoughts and experiences on the best spots to check out and the best gear to bring with. So if, like me, you want to spend more time outside appreciating the finer things in life, do yourself a favor and consider subscribing. Also, feel free to check out the description below for links to both the written version of this video in addition to all of the resources I mention. Alrighty then, without further ado, let us begin. So, growing up in New England, I've spent a lot of time hiking in New Hampshire's White Mountain National Forest. I've hiked over half of the state's 48 4,000 footers, some of them more than once, in addition to a few hikes outside of the White Mountains and in other states around New England. Ain't nothing but a thing. Although it does come with some auxiliary benefits, I'm not just telling you all this to toot my own horn. As many of you know from my last video, this past August I had the privilege of joining my dear old friend Bumba for a 30-mile hike around Colorado's 4-pass loop in White River National Forest. So today I thought I'd take the time to share a New Englander's perspective on the differences and similarities between hiking in Colorado versus hiking in New Hampshire. So, when you hike in New Hampshire, it's a lot more about bagging peaks, and at least on the Pemi Loop, you know, you're riding the ridge most of the way, and you're hitting peaks along the way, like Lafayette, Liberty, Flume, Garfield, the Bonds, those types of things. But here, this is called the 4-pass loop, and I think just because the mountains are so tall, they keep the trails mostly in the valleys instead of along the ridge lines. And a pass, in case you were wondering, because I didn't really know beforehand, is kind of just like a low point in a ridge, like a mountain ridge. So 4-pass loop, it's basically like you're going over 4 mountain ridges at the low points. In terms of the actual ground you'll be walking on, the trails in the White Mountains of New Hampshire are significantly more challenging than those on the Maroon 4-pass loop in Colorado. While hiking the Pemi Loop, you often have to scramble up boulders and hop from wet slippery rock to wet slippery rock, all while constantly staring at your feet to keep from shattering your ankles. I found it much easier to pick up momentum with a consistent, even stride on the 4-pass loop in Colorado. The difficulty in Colorado is the altitude, which really shouldn't be an issue if, unlike me, you actually take the time to let your body adjust before the hike. We just hit our 10th mile marker of the day. We're just shy of Frigidaire Pass in the Maroon Snowmass Wilderness, and looking forward to getting over this second hump, just because we hear there are some pretty dope campsites on the other side. So yeah, hopefully it won't be as bad as the first one. One thing I'm noticing about the altitude is it's just kind of been headachy kind of all day. It's just been pounding water. Literally every time I see a stream, I'll fill up my Katahdin filter bag thing, and then yeah, you can tell I'm out of breath just from walking and talking. But yeah, there's a lot of water sources here, so I'm carrying an extra liter, but might not be necessary. Oh man, yeah, the altitude really killed me on the last pass, but I mean, look where I am. Is that not worth it? My dear old friend Boomba, right over there. Stop for a little water break by this little glacial runoff.
I feel like shit.
Oh yeah? Tell them how you feel. I told them how I felt about the altitude.
I don't feel nauseous. I just have a little bit of a headache that just keeps getting a little worse the higher I go. And then the lower I go, the better it feels.
Yeah.
Pretty predictable.
I'm exhausted. We've already gone almost 13.5 miles today. First day. And I only landed in Denver yesterday, so definitely not acclimated fully. Aside from the avalanche fields and the occasional river crossing, the trails on the Four Pass Loop are mostly just dirt paths that are probably smooth enough to ride a road bike down if you tried. This brings me to trail maintenance. The trails on the Pemi Loop, and in all of White Mountain National Forest for that matter, are beautifully maintained and well marked. Colorado's Four Pass Loop is an entirely different story. We have now made our second wrong turn of the trip. Can't find the trail. As I mentioned in my last video, there were several stretches on the trails surrounding the Maroon bells that were completely obliterated by avalanches. Oh boy, maybe I should be using both poles instead of filming. Oh boy, oh boy. Precarious rocks, very loose. Fall down. And in certain areas, specifically along the Maroon Snowmass Trail, there were hardly any signs or trail markers. I guess the lack of signs could be a workload issue because we did see a ton of spots where it would probably take teams of people working for days on end to clear all the scree, trees, and snow off the trails, but New Hampshire's White Mountains are the clear winners when it comes to trail maintenance. Everything is well marked with signs, mile markers, and color-coded blazes. The worst I've ever encountered in New Hampshire is a sign indicating that a trail has been rerouted and maybe the occasional fallen tree that I needed to walk around. Even though they don't use trail markers on the Four Pass Loop, there were signs at most of the intersections we encountered on the first 2 days of our hike. But on the third day, when we hiked out from Snowmass Lake along the Maroon Snowmass Trail, there were several times we encountered forks in the trail that had absolutely no signs. When it comes to camping, the Four Pass Loop in Colorado is the clear winner. There are way more spots to camp, and they all operate on a first-come, first-served basis. Check out the links below for USDA maps of all the campsite locations on the Maroon Bells Four Pass Loop. While New Hampshire's Pemi Loop does have a couple of campgrounds like this, they're all formally monitored by live-in campsite wardens that keep track of who's staying in which site. While there are a ton of quote-unquote stealth sites along the trails, you can be sure that you'll get a visit by a ranger or warden if you're not up and out of there by dawn. There are alternative options along the Pemi Loop, including the AMC huts and associated campgrounds, but those have to be paid for and reserved in advance. This can seem like a bit of a bummer at first, but there are pros and cons to this system. Even if you don't plan to stay there, the huts are a great resting place for you to do your business, refill your water, and stock up on trail snacks and whatnot. Plus, having people working and living up there all summer long ensures that the trails are kept clear and well marked. My only issue with this system is that if you plan your trip weeks or months in advance, and for one reason or another you end up hiking faster or slower than you predicted, you can easily end up missing your reservation entirely or wasting half a day just sitting around when you could have kept on hiking. And now, my people, the time has come for me to discuss the pièce de résistance. The single reason mountain climbing ever became a thing that people do in the first place, conveyed in such beautiful simplicity as the primary motivator for the fabled bear that went over the mountain, and that is, of course, the epic views. It is undeniable that in terms of sheer magnitude, the views from the top of the Rocky Mountains are some of the best in the world. When hiking the Maroon Bells Four Pass Loop, you are continually presented with ever-changing, jaw-dropping vistas, made possible by the sheer height of the peaks and the vast expanse between them. While you do get some of this effect in parts of the Pemigewasset Wilderness, much of the Pemi Loop is traversed below the tree line, highlighting the reality of what many Appalachian Trail through hikers refer to as the Green Tunnel. Although hiking in New Hampshire is quite a different experience, the beauty of the Appalachians is undeniable both in and above the Green Tunnel. The plant life is significantly more diverse compared to the Rockies, and when you do pop out above the tree line, the shocking reveal can be just as rewarding as the views in Colorado. So, one thing I will say about Colorado versus New Hampshire is that aside from the insane wildflowers here, there really isn't too much diversity in terms of the plant life compared to the Appalachians. You know, when you're hiking in the White Mountains, you'll often pop in and out of like totally different ecosystems with like different types of trees, you know. See here, it's just mostly pine and spruce and fir and, you know, conifer trees. There's no birch. I like my birch. There are aspen trees, which are pretty nice, but I prefer the birch. Sexy birch. My point is that it's just different, especially water. I mean, I've been schlepping around this extra liter in an Nalgene for the past 3 days, and I maybe opened it once, but I don't think I even needed it because I've literally not filled up at half the streams we've crossed. So here, look, speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Another stream. So yeah, this place is just littered with water sources, way more than on the Pemi Loop in New Hampshire. Although they both pose their own challenges, in terms of overall difficulty, these two loops are pretty evenly matched. And just FYI, I hiked clockwise around both loops, though I will say that the Pemi Loop is probably easier going the other way around. So there you have it, folks. I want to wish a very warm welcome to those of you who are new to the channel. If this is the first video of mine that you've seen, I just want to let you know that I also make gear review videos in addition to the travel guides like this one. So if you're thinking about the gear you want to bring on one of these loops, or you just can't wait to see my beautiful face again, I'll leave some links below that should suit you quite nicely. Alrighty, my people, that concludes this week's episode of the Finder Bub Show. If you are thinking of hiking one of these loops, or if you already have, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments down below, especially if you think your insight can help me disprove something that I think I already know. But before you do, I just want to once again thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're planning your next trip or looking for new gear, don't let the small details stress you out. Remember, life's an adventure, so relax, breathe in the outdoors, and don't forget to appreciate the finer things in life. See you out there, people. Peace.